Thank you very much, Kathy, for your kind introduction. I think I need not add anything. I'm a patient with that retinitis pigmentosa. It leads to, due to photoreceptor loss, to blindness. Not always, but sometimes. And I'm so lucky that I'm blind now. But my work is very important for the next generation, I think. And I like this work for some decades. I did only research promotion. And now it's a new job, a new task for me. And I begin my talk. Today, I have the privilege to share my experience as a patient, expert, or representative in a scientific consultation session at the European Medicines Agency. I have been invited several times to attend face-to-face meetings at the EMA in London, and together with the pharmaceutical companies that plan to develop a drug or treatment for the rare disease, for my disease. And other experts have been invited as well. Being a patient with this disease, with this type of disease, it was my task of giving special advice from the patient's point of view. So this procedure is called protocol assistance. It is set by the Orphan Drug Regulation from 2000. We know that. It is one of the incentives for companies that develop drugs for rare diseases, I think. After I have done research promotion in my patient organization for so many years, I was really curious and pleased to have the possibility to help promote the next step of bringing the first therapies on the market. When the first application for my treatment came to the European Medicines Agency, it was the task of EURORDIS to identify the patient with that disease, a patient expert. And I'm grateful that EURORDIS gave me the chance for the training, which included e-learning, brochures, as well as the participation in a summer school. Concerning the involvement of patients, it is the question, what knowledge and which expertise do patients have for giving advice to scientists and companies? And patients who live with the disease, we know that all know better which benefits are improving their quality of daily life and which risks must be avoided. Furthermore, they have gained experiences in many clinical aspects and are familiar with most methods of measuring the natural course and the progression of their disease. Once EMA had sent me the company's application for seeking advice, I had the problem of identifying those issues which are relevant for the patients. It was a really long briefing package with a lot of questions and issues to be discussed with the European Medicines Agency and the scientists. While the preclinical issues are, of course, more relevant for the scientists, the clinical development and the clinical studies in this briefing package are of interest for the patients to give input for these companies. Firstly, the design of clinical studies, we have heard before a lot, should be discussed in the early stage with patients and with the companies. We know that the design depends on the mode of treatment. In my case, is it a gene therapy with an injection into one eye where the other eye is a control? Or is it an orally taken drug? The problems and the design are very, very different, and that was very astonishing for me for the same disease. It depends also on the aspects of the recruitment, the severity of the disease, and the stage of its course, and also the analysis of the results depends on the rareness of the disease, and sometimes we remind the statistics in that. Besides the impact on this clinical study design, the measurement, the methods of the measurements, the so-called primary endpoints, we heard that before, should be discussed and negotiated very carefully with patients. Although the results of the study might be a valuable success for science, it is not always clear whether it brings a clear, significant benefit for patients. Finally, I want to point out that patients who are involved in a scientific meeting at EMA should consider that the balance between benefit and risk should be respected also in the advice session. We also should take care that the usefulness for patients and the scientific progress should be balanced. I would like to mention again the orphan drug regulation, where it is stated that patients with a rare disease deserve the same quality, safety, and efficacy as other patients. Especially for these two aspects, efficacy and safety, patients should give valuable advice. And I hope that it's this advice, because it's a consultation session, should also go in the later decision-making process. Thank you for your attention. I think Natalie, my partner, will tell you more about the structure and the work of the European Medicines Agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to comment on from the importance from the agency of having this patient input?
Good morning, everyone. So at the European Medicines Agency, we have been talking with patients basically since we opened the doors, but as the years have gone by now, this is very much expanded and diversified, and now we have opportunities and methods in place to really gather the patient's voice along the whole life cycle of the medicine, and I think this is the value of it has been demonstrated over and over again. One of the key areas, as Helmut explained, is within this scientific advice protocol assistant procedures, where we are offering advice to the companies on the development plans that they have upcoming. And we always try and involve a patient who has experience of the disease and condition in this early dialogue. And it's been very valuable. It's been very beneficial having them participate in the discussions, and the kind of things they could contribute are in terms of the acceptability and the feasibility of the proposed design, issues such as compliance, tolerability, adherence, also in terms of endpoints, what are meaningful treatment outputs for patients. You know, they contribute these different elements that are not necessarily already around the table. So I always say they complete the jigsaw. There's missing pieces when there are not patients participating. I think also that they can contribute in terms of sometimes what is the severity and the symptomology of diseases. Often we are well aware of the common effects, but sometimes it's the patients living with the disease, as we've heard over and over again on a daily basis, that really understand the full picture, and this is very important to get across. I'm often asked, how do you measure the impact and the value, as I keep mentioning, in these procedures? And obviously there is just a tangible benefit having them present in the meeting, but we have looked back and we can say that over this participation in the last few years, that at least 50% of the input that patients are contributing ends up in the final advice which is given to the companies. So this really is a tangible effect. It does make a difference having patients participate. And I'd like to just finalize to say that, you know, this contribution from the patients, you know, which is very much appreciated because everyone takes time out of their daily life to come and give their time and participate in these meetings, and ultimately it helps to contribute to make better clinical trials, which will hopefully mean more medicines out there on the market which are needed. And I think this also shows empowerment of patients and also willingness of regulators to engage and recognize the importance of the patient's voice.
Can I ask you, before I open the discussion to the audience, what do you think are the ongoing challenges faced? Both of you, I would like you to answer this question. The ongoing challenges faced in engaging patients in the drug regulation process. So it's fantastic. You're saying that the patient's input is going into the scientific advice. You've very clear data to show that the patient's input is going into scientific advice, and clearly that could improve. But what could be done to increase patient engagement?
I think it's to try and really ensure that we have the patient's voice across the whole life cycle. So I think it's looking well in advance whenever we are preparing any kind of procedure, whether it's early on in the development phase, whether it's in the evaluation of a medicine, whether it's post-marketing, to always bear in mind we need to have the patient voice. So if we already think in advance to involve the patients, we can have time to find the correct patients, to train them if they need it, to get them time to be involved as well. So I think it's really forethinking and just to get everyone in the mindset of it's normal day-to-day business, having patients participate in every single procedure which will affect them ultimately.
So Helmut, from your experience, what would you say what the ongoing challenges?
Yes, I have been 4 times at EMA, and the first time it was really a little bit hard for me. I got the the words of I heard the words of EURORDIS, don't panic. It was really very, very much to read in English, of course. A lot of scientific parts. I'm used to it because I gave grants in my association. But what I can say, the next time I got used to it. I had the possibility to really only read very, very carefully the parts of the clinical studies. And I was really happy that I learned a little bit to concentrate just on this. And so I think a training is very good. Meanwhile, I was also between the first and the second one, I have been in the summer school from EURORDIS, and I have learned a lot of about clinical studies and about the differences of rare diseases and others. And it was a learning process from the first to the fourth. And the last time I was this month at EMA, and I really had the feeling that my words are more important than the first times. So I would propose that some patients would be trained and invited for several times, not for a long time, but it's a learning process. So I think that would be better training would be good. Maybe in my case, it's only a disease where no treatment exists. It was the first time that we have a treatment at the horizon. It was a very amazing and a very good learning process. But I don't know if it really goes into the decision process, but it is a consultation. It is a advice process. We need not demand for more. It's a very early process for the companies. The companies are those who seek advice. And it's a very, very early process. For the next clinical pivotal study, they plan. And so it is a very early process where patients get involved.
Thank you. It's very important, the point you make about training and learning curve, that it takes time to build that experience and become capable of giving the advice that's needed. Does anybody in the room want to comment on that? Does anybody have experience in getting advice from a patient perspective? How important is it for those companies represented in the room to have that advice when developing a drug? You're very quiet. It's not good at all, clearly. Okay, somebody at the back of the rooms.
Hi, good morning. Guilherme Freire from GSK. we tend to involve on deeming a patient-centric, and we tend to involve patients in many occasions. And one of them, and I also take the words from the lady from Novartis before, is that we are the ones inside the company trying to change even the status quo inside the company. So for us, we have also health advisory boards that can be on a global or European level for different topics, but then also on special areas such as oncology, rare disease. So we even recently had one on lupus, for instance. So we have the mission of actually bringing it inside, and we are as open as, and at least I think big pharmaceutical companies are extremely open to get the insight from the patients. But on the other hand, we always face a problem that in certain parts of the community there is a perceived conflict of interests, that we have patients and that we, as pharmaceutical companies, support patient groups on actually providing the trainings and developing to have patient advocates. So I think I share a bit of my input that we companies are extremely eager to work with patients, but also we face the problem of this perceived conflict of interest. So it's also something that just trying to launch something on discussion, how can we do this better, both as patient groups, both as patients individually and as pharmaceutical companies.
Okay. Conflict of interest is clearly an issue that needs to be tackled. Do either of you want to comment on that?
Could I?
Yes.
I just want to remark it from the patient side. You can imagine we are sitting there as one patient, yes, and there are members sitting of the COMP, of the other committees. There are scientists, and there is the staff of EMA. I don't know if it was the right question, but the one patient who is sitting there, I think that's also a problem for us who are the first time at EMA. Sometimes we sign the confidentiality because the companies need that, want that, it's clear. But we have no possibility to discuss our points within our association. We know that it's really important to be very confidential, and we really do that very strictly. But sometimes it's a little bit, you feel a little bit lonely if a patient is just sitting there and all the scientists have their mind, have also the possibility to discuss it before, but we don't have it. And I tried sometimes to ask, why couldn't we have a very small possibility to discuss it also with other patients in our association? That's a question more to Natalie, perhaps to discuss it within EMA. The part of the patients could be in the future perhaps a little bit stronger.
Yes, no, I mean, it is definitely a challenge. I mean, just to clarify, at the agency we work in two different ways. We work with patient organisations who we very much rely on for a platform for exchange of information and also for getting us in contact with the patients. But then when we involve patients within the ongoing procedures, which are obviously confidential, they do so as individuals with their own opinions, and they sign a confidentiality, and we check the conflicts. We do as much as possible try to involve 1, 2, 3 patients, because it's true, on your own it's really daunting and it doesn't help. And we do as well try and encourage that if perhaps they're not all coming to a face-to-face meeting, that there are perhaps other people who've also signed a conflict of interest who then can discuss beforehand on the documents before coming to the meeting, then at least have some kind of dialogue. But it's true, we should really try and involve more patients at once. Obviously, a lot of these meetings are very small.
With a rare disease as well, to find the expectations.
Find enough, yes, no, definitely. I mean, the one challenge we face as well is finding enough patients who are able to come and participate, who can speak English, and etc. So.
Yes, it's difficult.
Okay. One more question, Dennis. Let's bring in our online community there.
We have just mainly two comments actually echoing just what you said, Helma, from our online audience. One viewer saying that maybe it's time to re-evaluate the existing rules and regulations on contact between patient organisations and pharma. And another viewer called Nicola, who says that she was asked to be part of a steering committee for a clinical trial comparison, but she couldn't because of the EMA rule on conflict of interest.
So that's, again, a challenging situation that there has to be rules. I don't know, do you want to comment on that?
It's a really difficult balance. Obviously, there's confidential aspects. We have to make sure that we are working all on a very transparent and open basis. So there has to be some kind of analysis on conflicts of interest. And on the other hand, for you to be knowledgeable, there has to be some discussion on both sides, obviously with pharmaceutical companies as well, perhaps, and with us. Our rules are flexible for patients in terms of when the activity is passed, then there is possibilities to work with the agency. It's only if you are having a current ongoing discussions with the pharmaceutical company, you couldn't then also come and have the same discussions with the same company at the EMA. So we try and put in as much flexibility as we can, striking the balance.
Okay. Last comment, I saw a number of hands. You just have to press.
Hello, my name's Deborah Mann from the organisation for anticonvulsant syndrome. We took part in the things at the EMA last year regarding sodium valproate. And thank you, Nathalie. That was a really empowering experience. You were really brilliant with that. My concern is, obviously due to sodium valproate, we're concerned with adverse drug reactions. I was wondering if it was possible at some time that you would explore the rare disease community in looking at this factor, especially as so many mitochondrial dysfunction orders can arise from that. And the human and financial costs of adverse drug reactions to the, in general, is huge.
Definitely. I mean, we always are open to hear any feedback that you have. We're always looking at signals in terms of adverse reactions, and if they are significant, then they trigger a review at the agency. So,
Hello, I have a question. I think it's wonderful that patients are involved in the EMA and that they are in the process of advising companies, but I also have been asked once to participate. But to be honest, as you can see, I'm very disabled. And it is a big, big task to do such a thing. I'm from the Netherlands, and coming to Brussels is already an enormous journey. So how do you deal with that in rare diseases who are very disabling and limiting people in their access? We talk about access in all respects, not only treatments, but access in transportation, access in society, access in dealing with all the hurdles you have to take just to be an EU citizen. And that is what is really limiting to me to participate in important initiatives like yours. Because it's a big deal. And you don't get anything back from it except the fact that you do something, but it doesn't bring you bread on the table, so to say.
But it's a very important point you make, because a disability per se limits you having your voice, and that there's a significant number of people whose voice are limited by the mere fact of a disability that limits an ability to travel. We also heard, it's interesting, not only is disability a limit, but also capacity to speak English. Yes. I'm lucky, I was born in a country where English is my native tongue, but there are limits, and maybe both of you can comment on that. Helma, do you want to say?
Yes, the transport is really a problem. Because, yes, I must have another person. Sometimes I need an accompanying person. That's true. The transport, the costs are reimbursed. That's also very good. They take care for the hotel accommodation and for the flight or for the train. That's not a problem. But you really must have capacity in understanding English. And during the meeting, last time I recognized, it's also mostly there are native speakers, and they have a very they very quick mode to speak, and it's not, for me nearly not possible to follow, but I can only follow it very well if I read at home very much. So it's much time, no? Much time consuming, and the other, yes, you must have a person, and that's your personal problem. I could manage that now, but without my accompanying person, which is my husband, it's not possible. It's really a big investment, I would say.
So, Natalie, do you want to comment particularly around this topic of people who have disability, who have significant disabilities that limits an ability to travel? How do you give people in this situation a voice?
I mean, firstly, we do try and support you travelling to the meeting if at all possible. If it's not possible, there are always opportunities to participate in writing. So, for example, in the scientific advice procedure that Helma participated in, we often have people participating in writing only. So we would send them the report, we would then go through with it, what are the questions that are being asked, go through with it. They would then have some time to comment. They could then receive the minutes and the discussion afterwards. Again, they have an opportunity to comment. And I think more and more now with the new different ways of media and social media and everything, I think that we can look more and more as well at perhaps having more teleconferences, video conferences. I think nowadays there are a lot more opportunities to have virtual meetings. So this is perhaps another way to allow those who maybe can't travel, because it is a huge, we realize it's a huge commitment.
As we see today, there's quite a lot of people contributing virtually, and that certainly is the future. I'm going to bring this session to the close. Thank you both so much for your contributions. Thank you to the audience for your contributions. And I'm going to move on to our last duet. So thank you.